using the driving simulator, I was better able to assess my clients' needs, see where they're performing with motor planning, visual processing speed, but also those higher level functioning of executive functioning, working memory, situational awareness, because most clients, the first thing they ask is, when can I return to driving? So not only can I assess the situation while they're on the driving simulator, but I have objective data, metrics that I can show the patient, hey, look, you made progress today. This is great. Now we're going to take this and hone in on this skill, and so that you can improve to return to driving.
Firstly, I just want to say a big thank you for everyone who is turning up live and for those who are catching the replay. Um, this is a conversation that I feel that really needs to be had within our occupational therapy community. So thank you for being a part of it. So I'm Rhiannon Crispe. I am an occupational therapist based in New South Wales in Australia. I have my own pediatric private practice here. Um, I am a podcaster. I created the film Finding Me in OT, and I'm a wife, I'm a mum, and I have many occupational roles, just like many of you. And in so many ways, I'm just like you. And yeah, and in 2020, I founded the OT lifestyle movement because I had lost my passion and purpose along my journey as an occupational therapist. But I also had started to reconnect to the roots of OT, and I found my passion and my joy again. And I wanted to share this and I wanted to create more conversations around this. So it's led me on a wonderful journey, and here we are today. So I am joined by two incredible occupational therapists who are part of this panel discussion, Kavita Murthy and Bridget Mathis. So I'm going to hand over to them to introduce themselves. Kavita, did you want to take it away and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, everyone, firstly, to be here because I'm joining in at 7 p.m. So it's pretty much the end of the day. So I appreciate all of you, and Rhiannon, you're joining in at early morning, and Bridget after your day of work. So this is like really great. And this is what we are as OTs. We are really adaptive and we love this. So my name is Kavita Murthy, and I am currently a PhD candidate at New York University, working on my dissertation, hopefully trying to finish very soon. But I have been a pediatric clinical occupational therapist, and I've lived and worked across. Actually, I should say I have the privilege to live and work across two very different cultural and geographical contexts, like in India and also in Edinburgh in Scotland, where I did my master's. And right now I'm in currently a different sort of like position, but I'm also enjoying it. And like Rhiannon, I also do other occupational roles. Like I'm a mom, and I'm also a wife, and a sister, and other roles that we all do. But yeah, I'm very excited to be here, and thank you to have me.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for being here, Kavita. Bridget, hello, welcome.
Hello, everybody, or good afternoon or evening. I'm in Central Time Zone in Austin, Texas. So I don't know if we have any joining us from Texas, but thank you so much, Rhiannon and Kavita, for allowing me to join this panel, and for my boss, Fran, and our marketer, Todd, for putting this together. This is such an amazing opportunity for us all as OTs to really bond and motivate others to the opportunities within our world of OT. So I started out about 12 years ago as an OT, and found my way through the neuro sector, and was working in brain injury, and had this really unique opportunity to work with community reentry based. And so it really showed me what OT was at its finest, getting people back to living the life that they choose. And through the years, I've jumped around in different roles as an OT with many different populations. My heart has always been geriatrics. So found my way to geriatrics after working predominantly in neuro. And now found my new passion, which is technology and OT. So can talk about that more today. But I too, my occupations, I'm a dog mom. I may not have kids, but my dog is my child. And yeah, I enjoy my family and gardening or whatever, we as OTs can do to be creative. I always find that we're a creative bunch. So, but thank you.
100%. I can attest to that, those creative expressions. And I suppose that's what led me to creating the film. So let's kick things off. I think one of the best ways to kick things off is with a poll so we can all find out where we're sitting in the profession and how we're feeling right now in this moment. And I'm going to ask, I'm not sure if we can get the poll up. Have you ever experienced a period where you questioned your role as an OT or you lost your passion for the profession? So, if everyone can put an answer there, yes or no, I'm going to answer that because it's in my screen here. How do I? Oh, okay. It comes up in my screen. So, once everyone sort of clicked on that, we'll get some results. And if you haven't seen the film Finding Me in OT, that is available on the OT Lifestyle Movement website. It's all accessible for free. So wherever you are, anywhere over the world, you can access that. Okay, so we have, yes, so 91% of occupational therapists have felt like they've questioned their role or you've lost your passion for the profession. So that's a staggering amount, 91%. And I suppose that's reflective of why we're here today and having this conversation. You know, it's interesting. I was up late last night on my phone and I got this alert on Facebook and I started reading through some of the posts in one of our OT Facebook groups. And I'm not sure if you guys are part of these communities and how often we see people posting, I'm burnt out. I don't know if OT is the right profession. I'm only a new grad. I don't know if I've studied the right thing. I'm already feeling exhausted. I'm uninspired. And I saw two of those posts last night. And this is part of the reason why I created the film, because I have been in exactly the same place where I was dragging my feet to work. I wasn't enjoying what I did. It was work. It was monotonous and boring and just really unfulfilling. I didn't feel fulfilled in the work that I was doing. And so I wanted to create this film because somewhere along the journey, I did get that spark back and I did feel ignited again in my passion to do OT. And when I started to learn more about occupational therapy, maybe from a different lens than what I was sort of taught at university, but I just started to dig deeper into it, into what occupation meant and what it meant to be an OT. I really fell in love with it again, and I saw the incredible scope that we could um, work in as occupational therapists. So the film was created and birthed from this place to shine a light on the potential and the possibilities of our work and to shine a light on the heart and the wisdom of our profession. Because I think this so often gets overlooked in our very medical model based healthcare system. And um, and I also created the film because I want to empower, inspire, or validate your thoughts and feelings on what it means to be OT, on what we can do in our role as an occupational therapist, and even returning back to the roots of our profession. And we sort of go through this a lot in the film, is this qualitative aspect of occupational therapy. So the therapeutic use of self, compassion, empathy, person centered care. And I think this is a lot of the reasons why a lot of us as occupational therapists entered the profession in the first place because we actually care. We care about other people and we want to see people thrive in their everyday lives and improve their quality of life in some way. So, um, after 15 years as working as an OT, I feel so grounded in what I'm doing and so much more confident. And even though I always probably had the competency, I didn't always feel confident in what I was doing. Um, so that's a little bit about why I created the film and why it was important for me to create it, to shine a light on my personal story because I knew it wasn't just my story. It was so many other people's stories. And I'm constantly reminded that through Facebook posts almost daily. So I'd love to throw it over to Kavita and Bridget to um, maybe hear about a time where you felt uninspired or bored or unfulfilled or burnt out in your work as an OT. Who would like to go first?
Bridget, why don't
Kavita.
you?
Oh,
Sorry,
Bridget.
I think it was- Sorry.
Bridget, would you like to take it away?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I have kind of two defining moments, I would say, in my career that speak to this and why your film resonated with me. One was when I was working within the brain injury population, and here we were spending hours upon hours, days upon days, rehabbing our clients and wanting the best for them. And I started to realize there were gaps in our care, meaning, here we were trying to set them up for success to reintegrate into society. But then after they graduated from our program, there was nowhere for them to go. And families, couldn't take on the cost of caring 24 hours a day. Wives had to work, kids were in school. So how could they take care of a husband that needed 24 hours care? And so I think that moment of clarity hit where, what do I do? And I felt just helpless. And so how can I go into work every day and help rehab individuals, but yet know that in 6 months' time, like they're going to be faced with the next challenge, which is where are they going to live? How are they going to integrate back into society? And so that left me just very empty. And I really struggled with that. And so then I just, took a break and decided, okay, maybe I'm just going to go back to my roots and what called me to OT, which was geriatrics. And so I switched, I kind of ignored it, kind of ignored that little ping, which I think so many of us do because we need jobs and we do enjoy inherently what we're doing. So then I was working for many years in geriatrics, and I had the pleasure of working for assisted living and independent living facilities. And as you can imagine, you get very attached to the residents that live there because this is their life and we're coming in and we're joining their life. And I see them every day. I'm involved in activities. They become my family. When one would lose a spouse, and I would see them struggling to want to go to the dining room to eat alone, I would stay after work and go and eat with them just because, I understand that you don't want to eat alone. And so you become so involved in their life that you forget sometimes that separation. And the second moment of my career was within a 3-month period, I lost 6 individuals in that facility. And as healthcare providers, we don't think that we are going to grieve the loss of our patients in the sense of, we're prepared for it. We know that it's coming. We're the ones that recommended hospice care come in. We're the brave face for the family. We're their shoulder to cry on. We take on their burdens, right? To help them through this final phase and honoring a person's life. But what I didn't realize was during that time frame, to lose 6 individuals that meant the world to me, they were family to me, also took a toll on my emotional well-being. And I just realized I need to take a step away. I just don't know that I have more to pour into other individuals. And so those were kind of those two defining moments in my career where I thought, okay, I don't think I'm going to totally get away from patient care for the rest of my life, but maybe I can start looking into opportunities within the role of OT that I can try something new, such as, technology or academics or whatever that looked like. And I just thought, let me just take a moment to pursue some other avenues, and then never say never, you might go back to patient care. And so I just encourage you all, it's okay to, feel that way and have those defining moments, but then use that passion to kind of spur you on to start looking into other avenues if that's where you're at.
Thank you for sharing, because I feel like so many other occupational therapists will be able to resonate with that. And it comes back to authentic care, because we authentically care about someone else's life. It's not a facade. It's not, um, yeah, there's real connection there. And, that's a testament to who we are as an individual and the type of care that we provide. So, yeah, that's hard. Kavita.
Those are such inspiring stories and very powerful, because I have felt that way. But also for me, as I said, I started my practice and I was working as a clinical OT in India, and a lot of things that were written were from very different cultural like context and lens. And for me, there was, okay, so there needs to be this kind of like representation, like occupations are done differently across different cultural contexts. And even when we do talk about things like co-occupation, it is not just very specific to the interdependent Indian context. It happens here in the West too. It just looks a little different. And for me, that was the defining moment. And also, like, when I've largely practiced with like children on the autism spectrum, and for me that felt like that's the moment, like as Bridget said, like that was like a defining moment where I was working with this child, and he said like, I want to do this, but we are doing this. And I still remember, I'll never forget that activity. He wanted to blow bubbles, but that was not what it was. He was having that moment of like the time of his life, asking, talking, socially connecting, everything that we want from a person, right? Like that relation. But then immediately there's this thing that, oh, we have to take that away because your focus has to be this, and your focus has to be to develop the skills. And that was, for me that day, I personally like went back home and I felt so like as if I wronged someone, and it stayed on, it's still staying on. And I was like, this is what it needs to change. Like, this is not culture, this is very much person-centered care. And that was sort of the defining moment where I was like, you know what, not right now. I have time, but at some point I need to do this academic route and try to find out through research as to what we need to change as a paradigm, as a system, and bring in something different that is that takes us back, as Rhiannon beautifully captured in the movie, to like to the history of OT, which is grounded in occupation, which is grounded in people. And now that I'm listening to your stories too, it's that care, that connection, and taking us back to that. And yep, that's a wonderful question.
Mm,
Thank you.
and I love that your personal experience of working, with this child has fueled your career trajectory and what you decided to research and what you're doing. And so I think that's such an important message inherent in that, is that knowing that sometimes you don't know exactly the direction that you're headed, but just showing up each day and being authentic and showing up with love and care and a real curiosity to understand the other person who's in front of you, um, in that moment, that can spur something else, and you follow that curiosity until it becomes a passion, until you go, oh my god, like this is what I want to do. I love this so much, or I'm so curious about this, or I'm so frustrated by this that I want to learn more, and then I want to share more about this, wider within my profession or within my community. Um, so I think sometimes it's not needing to know, letting go of this idea of I know exactly where I'm headed, and I know what I want to do when I get out of OT school, and I know what kind of OT I want to work in, what setting I want to work into. I'm just going to start here and I'm going to see where it leads. And you have no idea where it will lead you. So I'm going to open it up now to questions, because I want this to be a conversation. I want us to um, talk to whatever's concerning you, whatever questions you have, anything that you want to ask us specifically or as a collective. Um, start thinking and brainstorming and enter it into the chat, and we'll be able to ask answer those for you. So while you're doing that, I thought I might talk about values, because I think as occupational therapists and as human beings, it's so important that whatever we do, our work aligns with our values. And I think after reading so many Facebook posts and after listening to so many occupational therapists from around the world, I feel like there is often a misalignment. So, um, if you value person centered care and you value listening to someone's narrative and really understanding who they are before you get into the intervention, and it's all quick, 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 but your workplace is really centered around and drilling in these like exceedingly high productivity standards, there's this mismatch, right? And there's a misalignment. Or if you value health and nourishing foods and you're working as a school-based OT handing out candy and lollies for good behavior, there's a mismatch and there's a misalignment in values, and you're not going to feel good about yourself doing this because it doesn't make sense with who you are and what you believe in. Or if you are working with autistic children and you value a neurodiversity trauma informed approach, and yet you're working in a team that is really excited and enthusiastic about ABA, there's a mismatch. So I think knowing that in the workplaces that you're working with, is there a misalignment of values? Um, because like Leela Loren actually says in the film, it's not necessarily the profession that's not right for you, it's the position. And knowing within occupational therapy that there's just so much out there and there's so much scope. Okay, I think we've got some questions coming through, so let me see. Okay, so Rhiannon, how did you go about becoming an independent OT consultant? I'm not sure how to remove the. Oh, yeah. So do you know what? I started probably maybe three or so years after graduating. I did a few different roles. I worked in hospital, I did work rehabilitation, I worked at a school, and then I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I I just didn't want to go back into any sort of workplace that I'd been before, and I'd actually moved into state, so I couldn't. And I was really at this point in my life and my career where I I was really enjoying what I was doing it with my life. Things I was changing and evolving as a human being. I was just becoming more inquisitive. And if you watch the film, you sort of see that at the start. And it was my husband who actually said, why don't you just start your own business? And I had so much self doubt. I thought, I don't know enough. I've only been working with children for 8 months. I can't possibly just go out and start my own business. But somehow I did build that courage. And I think courage is a muscle that you need to practice. And I suppose everything sort of led up to that moment. And I just started slowly. I just took on one client and I saw one client. And I thought, okay, this is manageable. I can do this. I can see another person. And I just slowly built up my caseload so it wasn't all overwhelming and too much. I think it's important to have mentors or a supervisor. I think it's important to know your own competencies. So if you love working in a certain niche area, then stick to that. I will get some people call me up saying, "Can you see my child who has these complexities?" And I will be authentic and honest and vulnerable and say, that's not within my scope, or it's not something that I'm trained for, and I will refer on. So I think being clear with your own boundaries around who you see is important as well. Okay. I'm just looking, Todd, if you can just send through any chats on the messenger, that would be great, because it's a bit hard to see on the chat for me. Um, but I think I'd love to hand it over to Bridget, because I think as OTs, there are so many different areas that we can work in. And I like to look at it as, instead of looking at it as a practice area, because when we think practice area, we do tend to think geriatrics, rehabilitation or physical rehabilitation, mental health, pediatrics, and we have these really siloed areas, practice areas. But I like to think of passion areas, like, what are you passionate about, and how can we step into that passion area? Because when we think that, it's so broad. Like, where there is people, there is potential for occupational therapy. Like, we can work anywhere. So Bridget, you are working in this new tech innovation space. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you and what you love about it?
Yeah, it is a very unique space, and but I will say it's gaining immense popularity. I have quite a few friends now that are in very similar roles, whether it's through robotic devices, eSTIM, um, whatnot. But yeah, I think my first kind of, I've always been inquisitive. It's funny, in undergrad, they actually made us take Intro to Engineering, which I loved, surprisingly. I love taking things apart. I love figuring out how things tick. And I think that is what lent me to go into occupational therapy, because I love figuring out how people tick, right? I want to know what they're thinking, how they're operating, what are you doing? So having that inquisitive mind, and always being curious, I think in private practice, or when I was working in geriatrics, one of the things that I had identified really early on was, that the elderly really struggle with technology, and but it's such a huge part of our world, and they feel very disconnected from their loved ones, from whoever it is, because they don't know how to just turn on. Someone gives them a tablet and they say, "Oh, grandma, I'm going to FaceTime you." Well, they don't know what that means. And so as an occupational therapist, I started looking, much like Rhiannon does in the film. I started kind of taking a step back and thinking, what does occupational therapy really mean? And I think I know in the US, it's very ingrained in us that therapy has to look a certain way. You have to do these really robust treatment plans. If you're not, improving in some motor skill or visual skill in some way, that you're not doing therapy, right? But I started to realize that that's not really true. The best therapy sessions I had sometimes were just taking them outside for a walk so they could get a breeze on their face and enjoy a sensory, and they would start to talk, and then we'd get somewhere. I'd find out what why they didn't want to make progress, or what those burdens were, right? And one of the things I noticed with technology was they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to operate it, and it creates a barrier, not to interacting with family, not a success. So I started hosting little technology clubs within the assisted living to teach them how to use their cell phones, how to, use their iPads. And so it was kind of there, that start of, how do we integrate technology into rehab? And then I started thinking, this was during the time that Alexa started coming out, and I was like, oh, this is brilliant. Like, my patient with macular degeneration that can't see anything, to turn the TV on or use their remote control, that gives them so many challenges. Like, wow, we can connect it to the TV and they can just simply say, "Alexa, turn the TV on," and I saw how technology started to transform their lives in just simple tasks. And to me, helping set them up for success with technology became very important. So that was kind of the history that led me into starting to look into technology. So I started Googling technology companies that I liked. It just was, I was like, I just want to see what kind of people do they employ, because I know that
Mm,
I used it in many different ways that they're not thinking.
mm,
And that was when I first stumbled upon the title of like a clinical specialist. It was like for a product, it was a robotic product. And I just thought, oh, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know that my skills as an OT could transfer into that. And so through that, I started researching, reaching out, networking, and trying to really figure out this lens of technology in rehab and how it coincides. And and so that's what led me, here even today to STI Drive, helping with the development of driving simulators for rehab, and how do we really use that product in a clinical sense? How are we integrating into the communities? How are we helping people in the communities? Whether it's it could just be, helping the elderly make sure they're safe on the road. But really, what I used it for when I worked in the neuro sector was just building upon skills. And so technology has really enhanced, but yet for many of our patients, like it can be a stumbling block. And so that's how we look outside of our lens as OTs to incorporate something that's going on around us. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah,
that's just
no, that's awesome. I've got another one for you, Bridget, and then I've got one for Kavita. So Bridget, you've talked a bit about tech, and this is coming from Pam from Perth in Australia. Um, you've talked about tech a bit, which has done so much for our profession. At the same time, we are such a human-based profession. How do we balance that, as we never want to lose that human touch in OT? Can they coexist? And what's inspiring all of you now? We might leave that one till the end. But yeah, if you can answer the tech part of that,
sure.
Bridget.
Yeah, and I love this question because I think inherently the first time we start thinking about integrating technology, we think, well, we don't want these machines coming and doing and taking away our job. But that's just it. They could never do our job because we're the eyes and the ears, and we're the hands-on, right? So for instance, I was teaching students how to use the simulator, and a patient came in and he had had a stroke, and so he had um, deficits on his upper extremity on his left side. And one of his goals was to be able to incorporate that left side into driving. He was driving, he had an adapted vehicle, but he was already driving, but he wanted to be able to sustain his grip on the wheel. He wanted to improve his endurance with forward flexion. So, I said to the students, I said, so, okay, so it's not that we're teaching him how to drive. He's already driving. He's independent in that ADL, IDL. I said, so what is really at the base of this? And so through talking with him, it's like, well, let's talk really about that scapular mobility of the shoulder. What does it take to, let's break it down. What do you need for driving? Do you need forward flexion, internal rotation, external rotation? What is it that we have to do? And I said, so what are you going to do when we put him on the driving simulator to practice this? What are you going to be doing? And so the students had that aha moment of, just because he's on that piece of technology doesn't mean that my skills as a therapist aren't coming alongside. So I had all the students doing some scapular mobility. They were doing hands-on techniques to help integrate his upper extremity with driving. And technology couldn't do that. They can't improve his shoulder range of motion. It can't improve how his scapula is functioning. That's what we do. And so I just think that's where we could use the device to help him feel that he was accomplishing his task, which was, he at the end of that session was like, wow, I held my arm up for 10 minutes on the steering wheel. And that was the longest he had ever done. So he came away feeling very empowered to continue practicing. And he wasn't the best at doing his home exercise programs. And he would be the first one to tell you that. And so now he took us more serious because he was like, oh, okay, so if I do the exercise that you all provide me, that maybe this will continue to help me facilitate movement in that arm. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where we still have that hands-on approach. We still have our clinical lens. We're still being our therapist first, but we're using technology to help engage
As a
that
tool.
client and empower
Yeah.
them. Right.
Yes, no, I love that. And even, nothing can replace the care and the connection. Like technology cannot replace that. And that's what we do as OTs. It's that therapeutic use of self. We need to develop the trust, the connection, the rapport so they feel safe with the technology, especially in this older generation who it's unfamiliar, it may feel unsafe or unknown. And that happens through the relationship. If you step into a relationship with a different therapist who's just like, okay, get on here, do this, do that, you're not going to, they're not going to see the change or the impact or the ability to get back to driving like they can with a therapist that they truly connect with.
Right.
Thank you. That's an awesome question, Pam.
Yes.
And thanks, Bridget, for answering it. All right, Kavita, are you ready? Okay, this one's for you. So, what are you finding in your research so far? What are your hypotheses about, and what needs to change? What might the paradigm shift look like? I'm thinking connection, humanness, if that's even a word, therapeutic use of self, and those are some of the things that you might be exploring. This is from Samantha.
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you, Samantha, for that question. And also, like, there are like different layers to it, so I'm going to try to answer it more like, systematically, just to get to all of it. So what am I finding in my research so far? So I started off with coming into this program, into this PhD program. My advisor had this amazing after school maker club engineering, and Bridget said engineering, so this is an after school interest-based engineering after school club for middle school students. And this is an inclusive club, so there's students on the autism spectrum and non-autistic students as well. And I came in trying to think that, oh, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to see if this is an effective way to do like therapy, or like if it's an effective way to do an intervention and call it OT. But as I started it, my advisor, and she's brilliant, she was like, why don't we start with, like you're saying, strength-based practice? Why don't you start looking at strength-based practice from a perspective that is not yours, but from a perspective that is from the community? And so I was like, oh yes. And I started doing a scoping review, because like, let's see what the landscape of intervention looks like with an OT for strengths based. And I was actually really sad because there were very few studies that authentically use strengths-based approach with like children on the spectrum. And it's not just children, it's people in general. Like Bridget's example was all about strengths-based, this person coming in, being motivated, what they want, their goals. And my advisor, Dr. Christy Patton, always says that no one builds their lives on their weaknesses. We all build our lives on our strengths. So if we can do it, why not our service users? So I was like, okay, you know what? This is where I started. And I started off with the scoping review, saw that there were very less interventions. And one thing that kept popping up as we operationalized strength-based interventions was the fact that we need to be more collaborative. We need to be more participatory in nature. And that's where I felt like, okay, so this is the next step. Like, this is exactly what the research is telling us. This is exactly what the community is telling. So for me to start off as this person who's going to look at the effectiveness of a program, I have now reached this point, and it is still changing, like it's still dynamic. But at this point, I'm working with these middle school students. We formed questions together, research questions that we want to look at, and we are trying to get that voices that was actually missing from this whole evidence base, which didn't have autistic voices, to bring those voices in. So I formulated the questions with autistic stakeholders, and I don't like the word like stakeholders. I would say like autistic participants who are collaborators in my research, or co-researchers, and now we are looking at it together. And then I was like, oh, okay. I got the feedback from the field was that, hey, like interviews don't work, and these are middle school students, and so we brainstormed, and they were very happy, and we even piloted, and now I actually finished collecting my data with this approach called photo voice, where they would click pictures and then talk about pictures, because that's a much more effective way for them to talk about things, and we've incorporated that in my dissertation, in this research, and that's where I'm at, like, and that probably answers the first question. And I think the second question was, it was about the paradigm shift, right? And
Yes.
and I
What
love the,
might it look like?
what might it look like? I love the word, Samantha, humanness. That's all that stood in my. I was like, yep, we need that. We need that. And yes, and why shouldn't we have that? Like, we are all about, and I think Bridget and Rhiannon, both of you will attest to this, that we are all about people. We are all about connections. We are all about, and that's why I feel like OT is one of those professions which is universal, right? Like, I can come from my setting in India to this completely different setting, and we are all sitting here and we all have the same values, and that's because we touch upon this core concept of like humanness, of trying to understand who we are working, and also the other word that you said, about like love and connections, and bringing that up. And I would love to see a framework that comes out of that, and I think it would probably only come out if we work with our stakeholders, if we work with our the people that we want to serve, and like be helpful to. And as Bridget was also talking about, it is to create those environments that are facilitatory. That's what you did, and that's why technology, that's just a vehicle to sort of get people to do things. It could be anything. It could be art, it could be craft, and now it's because we are in this world of technology, it's technology, but it's all about that connection. It's all about holding on to. And I think I read this somewhere. I don't want to misquote, but I read this, that OT is one of those professions that melds, or like builds and blends art and science, and that's exactly who we are as people. So I think I
Yes.
hope I answered all the.
Yes. No, that's great. And it kind of leads into our next question here. So, um, okay, and this one's from Adele. So, I'm very interested in broadening the scope of OT and working in non traditional or unconventional roles where OT is not as common. Do any of you have any advice on remaining true to OT core values while still paving the way for OT to work in these unusual spaces? I, yeah, I've got a few thoughts on this. And this is because this is something that's come a lot in conversations that I've had with people who've come on the podcast, and just in conversation and connection with so many OTs. And I think what we often get confused is, well, what is OT? What's at the heart of our profession? And at the heart of our profession is occupation. And if we stay true to occupation, and we always know that the goal and the mission and the purpose and the work that we do is centered around helping people to re engage or engage in their everyday occupations. An occupation is anything that someone does that occupies their time, whether it's brushing their teeth, to going to the toilet, to connecting with friends at the movies, to playing high level first class soccer. Like, it doesn't matter, whatever your occupation is in your daily life, if we stay true to that and helping people through the humanistic lens, taking into account the context. So I think that's very important too. And you've both touched on this, as context and environment, and knowing that we cannot assess occupation without understanding the person's environment. And I think sometimes this can get a little tricky in some places and spaces that we work, because our clients are out of their usual context. So always looking at where is the occupation being taken place, and staying true to that. And it doesn't matter what you do. Like, we have occupational therapists who are doing acupressure, body work, like circus based occupational therapy. There are OTs who are in farm based practices. I'm reading off a little list here. I've got sexology, spirituality. Then there's all the oncology, neurology, But it can be anything. Like if your passion is working with horses, there are ways that we can work with horses as occupational therapists. There are so many autistic children who find this animal-based therapy very calming and regulating. If you love, think about, for me, curiosity is my GPS. What is it that ignites a flame or a fire within me? What do I love? What do I enjoy? And or alternatively, what is it that breaks my heart? What is it that in society feels so there's just imbalances or inequalities or inequities, and I want to address them because I feel so passionate about it, and letting that be that driving force. But wherever you go, as long as you take your occupation centered focused work, looking at the environment, bringing your humanistic lens, that person centered care, um, yeah, I don't think we can go too wrong if we stay to those true core values. Um,
Can
uh,
I
yeah, can you add to that,
Well,
please? Go ahead.
I just have like two words to add to that because you did everything brilliantly. Just also being open-minded, because when I was just listening to Bridget's like experiences and she was talking
Mm,
about this, finding this unconventional space, which is, is it truly unconventional? Yes, it is. But then she was open-minded to sort of embrace that. And same with
mm,
research for me, from where I come from. I was like, I've been very prescriptive at the start of my career. From there to like being open and being in the state of constant discovery and trying to, find new things, and things don't stay the same, right? Like you go in with this and things just completely change and you're like, oh yeah, we are open-minded. We can take on that. And yeah, that's my 2 cents.
mm. No, I love that. And I think, yeah, it does tie into that person centered care and, yeah, knowing what they want and being open minded to that. Because I think sometimes we can get caught in that cookie cutter approach, um, which is all stemming back to that medical model. Okay, so there was one initially. Um, so, what inspired me to make the film for others, and how did it resonate? I think it's resonated on so many different levels, and I think it's personal based on your background, your experiences, where you are in your career and your journey, whether you're just starting out, whether you're tying up the ends of your work. I think it just lands differently with different people. I've heard that it can be very validating for some people because they're hearing from these incredible scholars and occupational therapists from around the world who are talking their language. But I feel like there's a gap sometimes between what we know is inherently true as OT and how we want to practice and how we actually practice in the real world setting. So bridging that gap, I think is it's been made a little bit easier because they've seen OTs and these incredible scholars, really confirming and validating their thoughts. So, yeah, that's some of the feedback that I've had. Are there any? What else have we got? I'm just mindful of time here, so we'll try and answer short responses. I'm from New Zealand and have been very keen to start my own OT business, doing a bit of everything I enjoy, but healthcare is funded here, and I'm struggling to know how to market myself when people can access allied health care publicly for free. Rhiannon, how did you go about getting your name out there, and how do you find people who are motivated to privately fund it, even when public funding is available? That's a great question. I do actually see a lot of people who have insurance. So they are funded through their insurance or the disability scheme. And I do see people privately. I think that this is a big conversation, like around marketing and marketing yourself and being confident and getting the word out there and connecting with the right people. But I will say one thing is if you can connect with other organizations or other businesses who are local in your area, and they already have like a big email list or a big community. And if you connect with them, then it's not just you posting on Facebook trying to get the word out there and it's just you. You're connecting with the people that already have the bigger communities. So it can trickle down and they can, put a post on their community board, send out an email, let them know how you can serve their community. Because that's what it's all about. It's not necessarily about from this space of pushing your business, but rather inviting people and showing how you can support and serve their communities. So that's probably the hot tip that I give on that. Okay. With the resonate question, how did the film, I'm guessing, resonate with Bridget and Kavita? Yes. Are there any ways that the film resonated with you? That's a question that came through. Anything that comes up? Well, Kavita is obviously a star in the film.
Gonna say that.
Soon to be on Netflix. Watch out, world. No. Yeah. What were there any other themes that I suppose that maybe some of the other professors spoke about? I know you're also friends with Michael Awama, and there's a lot of crossover with your beliefs and your values as well.
I actually love that question because I've watched the movie like twice now. No, no, more than twice in different bits and pieces because I listened to it. And
Yeah.
and what I loved about the movie was everyone brought in these life experiences which are so like instrumental and powerful, and it is all about life experience. It's about your life experience, Rhiannon, and how you sort of like found passion in this area where or in the space that you were, and you were so like raw and authentic, and I love that. And I'm actually a sucker for life experience and stories like that, like a person's story, just to see where they um took a decision or where they didn't take a decision, how they did it. So for me that was the best part. Like you brought those, like with your interviews, and not just interviews of all the professors but also the interviews of real life. That for me was like the biggest USP. Like, it was like, wow, like you could connect, like literally the part where I'm speaking, you connected my words with someone from the community, and that person, I don't even know, I've never met that person, and he actually spoke what you saw that, right? Like it was so beautifully woven together. It was like a quilt of experiences, and for me that was that'll always stay, and that's very powerful. So I loved it. That's the best part.
No, thanks, Kavita. I'm mindful of time here. Was there anything, Bridget or Kavita, that you wanted to say as we wrap up? Um, any takeaways? If we think now that there's an OT professional who is listening to this, who may be in a deep, dark space of questioning whether occupational therapy is even for them, they might feel like hanging up the boots, walking out, um, burnt out, stressed, jaded, unfulfilled, uninspired. What is your last thing that you would say to them if this was the last message they could hear?
I I would say, like in your movie, occupational therapy can look different than what we inherently are taught maybe or think, right? Like as you all have been expressing, we think getting out of school that it's going to look this certain way, and people are going to inherently want our expertise or to want the help, right? And how many patients have you had that didn't want the help, and they needed the help? So it's really taking that step back and just knowing, okay, maybe I need to put aside my pre-existing thoughts of what OT was. And I love in the movie how um I loved the gentleman that you had, that you were in the bathroom with him, just helping with home modification and coming alongside him. But the one thing that struck me in the movie was you were quiet and you were taking it in and you were being present, you were acknowledging their struggles, but you weren't interjecting in a way that was um, forceful of your opinion or how you thought or your ways of living, right? You're just coming alongside that person. And I think when you're struggling with occupational therapy or your job or what you're doing, is it because we put these expectations on ourselves and in that job? And can we take a step back from it and really just start to think, okay, I need to put myself aside and I'm just going to take a deep breath and I'm just going to approach this from a different lens. And that's what you
Mm.
talked about in the movie. And that really spoke to me because I think for so long I focused on OT with this certain lens. And we are allowed, our job is, we can create OT out of anything, right? And that's the
Mm.
beauty of OT. And that's what I always say to students, like, anything is occupational therapy. You just know how to
Yeah.
document well, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but really, it's taking that step back to really not getting in that cycle of, oh, I need to be doing X, Y, and Z. It's more, let's just come alongside and let me be quiet. And the best advice I had when I was in OT school is they said, sit on your hands. And I didn't
Mm.
really understand what that meant. Um, but when I started interacting with patients, how we're so quick to jump in and help. But if we sit on our hands or we sit and take a step back from the way we view the world and we come alongside those people in their world, then suddenly the doors open to how are we creative in OT and it breathes that new life. So I would say
Mm.
that would be my takeaway.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Kavita, any last words of wisdom?
I should have spoken before, Bridget. That was beautiful. That was powerful.
Yeah.
But just like to add to it, like in the movie and to be an authentic, because OT is a lot about therapeutic use of self, and from the movie as to how you understood where there is this point of like, you know what, this is not working. And as an OT, to accept that, like when I was working and I was using these deficit based reductionist approaches, which is what is taught to us, as Bridget beautifully pointed that out. That is, we come out looking at, oh, this person can't do this and this person has this as, that's lacking, and then we want to bridge that up and we want to jump in, we want to help. It's all like really good intention, but at the way it comes out is probably not, it doesn't look the best. But then just to like as you said, like being authentic and accepting that, like Rhiannon, there was a moment there where you were crying and you showed that vulnerability in the movie, and for me that stayed on. It is really important that we need to be like, oh, you know what, this is not working for me, or you know what, this is wrong, this is what I did here was not right. I actually went back to talk to a couple of the young adults that I used to work with, and did things that probably that was me at that point. But to go back and say, I'm really sorry, look, this was not right, and and to be open and accepting of that, and saying that, you know what, I'm growing and we are growing too, and to be kind to ourselves, like apart from everything that we do, to also be kind to ourselves.
Yes. No, I love both of those answers. And I think that will resonate with so many OTs. And I think they're also um, with what you said, Kavita, in terms of we don't always get it right, right? And being vulnerable enough to say, like, I didn't get it right, or um, knowing that within occupational therapy, we as human beings are constantly transforming, constantly evolving. So there is this simultaneous evolution with how we practice as well. So knowing that as we change, so does our practice. Nothing's stagnant, nothing's stale. It's constantly dynamic. So as we up level as human beings in our own personal life, and how we show up also means our practice changes. Um, the last thing that I'd like to say to everyone is that know that you are enough. You are enough. You are smart enough. You are knowledgeable enough. You are experienced enough. Even if you are in your first year, you you have so much to give, and trust in that. Trust in that, because I think we have a crisis of confidence more than anything else in our profession. We lack the confidence, and we have such a beautiful profession, and can really empower people to live such incredible lives how they desire, and sort of echoing what Kavita and Bridget has said in terms of being open to how people want to live their life. So yeah, we can make a beautiful career out of this if we are open to all the possibilities. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Over to Fran to close things out.
Now, beautiful, Rhiannon. Great way to close this. You know, we did this at AOTA. All of us here got to watch the movie, and then we spent only, an hour on the panel. And I was like, geez, we just scratched the surface. So I was glad we were doing this again. And now we got another scratch on the surface. One. So please, folks out there in the audience, go check out the OT lifestyle movement. Go check out STISM Drive and some of the great things we're doing to improve patient outcomes. And we really appreciate you. Love our OTs. And so we'll be doing things like this again. So hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Fran. Thank you so much, STISM Drive, for hosting this. Without you, I probably wouldn't have done it. So it's been able to bring us all together, have these conversations.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
People across the world. And it's, you guys are doing awesome things in this space to support people to live meaningful lives and get back to really meaningful occupations that they may not have been able to otherwise.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone,
Thanks,
for being
everybody.
here. Have an amazing day.
Bye.
Bye.